I know how much it sucks sometimes going through things with the kind of schedule that you have. So I'm kind of open to changing that. If there's anybody, or if you guys are all in agreement, I guess we can take a vote. If there's a different time that you would like to meet other than 7 to 9, I'm going to kind of leave that open for suggestions. And if we can all land on something that works a little bit better for everybody, I think it could be good to change that. The other sections are Monday and Wednesday, 2:15 to 4:30. I've already spoken to at least one of you who said that Tuesdays and Thursdays are really wide open. So potentially, if you were interested in shifting to Tuesday and Thursday, we could do that. But I know that this is probably the last thing you want to do on a Monday night is have to sit in a class until 9 o'clock. So that's why it's not there. And I don't know if any of you have suggestions and you want to kind of pipe in, or as Rebecca says, we could do a poll or something like that. I could send out sort of a survey afterward and have you guys kind of write in and give your suggestions. But if there's a conflict and if we have to stick with this time, we can. But I just wanted to put that out there and leave it open to you. So I don't know if anybody want to pipe in now and kind of give your 2 cents. If not, I can wait until after class and send out just a little survey for you guys. So another thing also with how I'm structuring this. So I have listed there that this is asynchronous, 100% online. And that's true. The way I did this last year was it was kind of fully asynchronous, and I didn't have any set meetings like this whatsoever. And I like to approach the class like that just because you in the interior design program don't really have the option outside of core classes or electives to take something that's asynchronous that you can kind of just do on your own pace throughout the week, that's flexible. And I get it. So I wanted to kind of change that and give you a course that's like that because I want this to be as seamless and pain-free as possible. I totally get how it is being in your shoes. This semester, speaking with some of the other professors, they mentioned that coming from last year's course to this year's course, it could be a little bit of a learning curve, steeper learning curve for you guys just because we're on this new curriculum and there could be little gaps in knowledge here and there. So to mitigate that, what I want to do is make the live sessions only once a week, and that's going to just kind of be a time for us to go through some of the core concepts that we're focusing on during the week. And I'll just run through things live. It can be really active and hopefully interactive, where maybe you're working on your studio project and you run into some kind of an issue. Maybe they've, brought up some kind of requirement for you and you have no idea how to do it. And it might not even be something that we're covering at the moment in our class, but you can ask those questions and I'm available to just be like, oh, okay, well, that's how you do that. So I'll give you just a little live demonstration. And that's really going to be my approach for how we do it. For the most part, we're going to stick to things that are relevant for the particular week and whatever module we're in during this course. But otherwise, it's going to be pretty loose and open for you guys to interact and ask questions and things like that, and for me to just help you out. I don't plan at the moment on doing a second live session, and the reason for that is because I want to reserve the second day that normally we would be in class. So if it were Monday or Wednesday, the Wednesday would be for you guys to just focus on this stuff on your own. Okay, so I don't think we need to meet live. I'll just try to get through all that on Monday, or whatever day we decide to end up meeting afterwards. And then you can use the second day to really just on your own get caught up and work on things. That'll be your time you can set aside to do that, because there's going to also be a lot of videos and stuff to watch too. Um, the attendance for the live sessions, I highly recommend that you attend, but I get it. I get it being just another thing that you don't want to do. So I'm not going to take attendance for those. It's really just going to mainly be asynchronous for the course content. So if you don't want to attend any live session and you think that you're good and you're fine with just sticking to the posted content, you can do that and you can take the class 100% online without even ever, interacting with me whatsoever. That is your choice. I want to make it as flexible for you guys as I can, like I have said over and over and over again. So that's kind of my approach with things. It's going to be pretty loose. I'm pretty laid back, I guess. I'm not super picky about how things are done. I'm really just go with the flow, and whatever works best for everybody works best for everybody. And hey, I get it. We're all busy. I am too. So, whatever we got to do, if you guys need like live sessions or one-on-one help or anything like that, let me know and we can set up a time anytime. I'm super, my schedule's flexible. I work from home, so I can kind of fit things in here or there throughout the day, wherever. So that's another point, along with those Wednesdays being for you guys to spend time working on things. That's also a time you can take advantage of to meet with me. So if you need help with something and you want to get on like a Google Meet session or like a Zoom call and share screen and kind of show me what you got going on, we can do kind of like a support session like that, and I can just walk you through stuff. So that's what that day I think is going to be best suited for. All right, so moving on from that, just kind of getting into a little bit about the class. The description of what this class is it's an expansion on Rep and Vis 2. So I know that you had that last year, I think a full year ago, if I'm not mistaken. And in that class, you should have been exposed to some introductory Revit concepts, maybe a little bit of Rhino, if I'm not mistaken. Just some of more the intro side of the tools that we're going to be using in this class. So this class is going to build on that class, but it's going to go a lot more advanced with it. All right, so we're going to get past the intro stuff, and we're going to dive a lot more into rendering technology. So we're going to focus on like external tools outside of Revit that we can use to render and present our projects. The big one that we will be focusing on is Enscape, and I've spoken with Jakisha, and she told me that some of you are already using Enscape in Studio, which is awesome. So we're going to keep going with Enscape and kind of teach you how to use that in a more advanced way. Other things that we're going to do right at the beginning of the class, we're going to focus a lot on just Revit and Revit family creation. And then after that, we're going to get into CD sets. So we're going to go through the whole process in Revit and how we set up just a basic CD set. And that should tie in really nicely with your studio. And they should kind of align so that when they're asking you for CD related content in Studio, in this class, we will be going through the CD set stuff, and it'll just line up nicely and just hopefully be a pretty seamless transition, and you guys won't be, hopefully not very confused since we're doing it at the same time. Trying to think if there's anything else I'm missing. I know that you guys in the past have used Rhino quite a bit for stuff, and that's awesome. And I personally use Rhino, on a daily basis for what I do. But with this class, I want to try to add some more tools to your arsenal. So we're going to get into SketchUp a little bit. Some of you might have used SketchUp in the past. Maybe some of you have never touched it at all. But I want to introduce it because For whatever reason, for as long as I've been at Kent State, starting in 2013, nobody likes SketchUp in the entire college, and I don't know why. Nobody seems to want to teach it. Nobody ever wants to talk about it. They just kind of write it off as if it's like a toy or something. But in my experience, when you get out in the real world, you're going to find a lot of people who use it. And it is a tool with its place and purpose. And if you use it for the right things, it can be super beneficial. It has a lot of strengths. So we're going to get into SketchUp and we're going to cover it. And then if you decide to use it, you can use it. If you don't want to use it, you don't have to use it. But the whole idea is exposure. So everything that I show you in my classes and the way that I set things up and the content that I choose to cover is all things based on my direct experience of working in the industry professionally. So I'm not the type of person who likes to just pick things because I like them because, hey, it's cool. But if it's a super niche thing that nobody is ever going to use in reality, there's no point in wasting time covering it, in my opinion. So everything that we talk about has been thought out, and it's going to be something that is directly applicable to what you do, I promise you. So that's just how my mind works. I'm super practical, and I like to focus on practical things and not fluff. So we're going to try to make this as beneficial of a course for you as we can, and as practical as we can. Okay, so getting into course learning outcomes. After completing the course, you should understand how to use advanced rendering tools and techniques, present design solutions using 3D modeling and rendering technology, apply mixed media techniques and design presentations. So that's just going to be, the variety of applications that we use. You'll be able to combine concepts from all of them together and use them to fit the particular application. Whatever the best tool for the job is, you'll be able to know what that tool will be, and you'll be able to use it effectively, essentially. So we're going to build on your role of your understanding of visual representation in computing design solutions. Prepare CD sets based on design projects. In terms of software, we're going to be using Revit 2023 or older. So I really don't care what version of Revit you use. It really doesn't matter for me. I have pretty much every version of Revit installed 2019 all the way through 2023. The thing to know about Revit, though, is versions really matter for some things. For this class, just because I have all the versions, it doesn't really matter to me. So as long as you're using the newest version, it's fine. I'll have access to your projects. But typically, Revit files are not backwards compatible. So if I were to build a model in Revit 2023 and then give it to somebody who only has Revit 2019, they would not be able to open my file. Okay, so you have to be really conscious of that when you're working in Revit, and it's good to know that. But for us, we don't have to worry about that too much just because I have all the versions of Revit and it's fine. So if you have the newest version, that's great. If you have an older version, that's great. I'm going to be building all of the starter files that I give you for the course out in, I think they're in Revit 2020 maybe, 2019 or 2020. So as long as you have a version newer than I'd say 2020, you are fine. If for some reason you don't, and I don't know why you would, update your version to the newest version, whatever. But, if you're in 2022, 2023, should be perfectly fine. AutoCAD, any version of AutoCAD works. We won't really need AutoCAD a lot, so if you don't have it, don't worry about it right now. Pretty much anything that we would need AutoCAD for, we could do that in Rhino. So don't worry about that one yet. If something comes up and I think that we need AutoCAD, I'll tell you, and then you can download it. But don't worry about that one right now. SketchUp. So you don't have to buy SketchUp right now. I know down below this I have listed that you should get this by the second week of the course. Don't worry about it right now. I'll tell you when to download that. That is going to be $55 a year, unfortunately. It's one of those just annoying subscription things. I hate subscriptions, especially on software. But that's only $55 a year if you're a student, so it's not too bad. And there's the link where you can get that when the time comes. Enscape. So Enscape, if you don't have it already, you can get a free student license of it here. You just have to sign up when you click on the page, and it's super easy, and it's a thing that you have to renew every year, but it's free. So as long as you go back to this link, and I'm not going to click it right now, but you just do that once a year and you just renew it, and then you get another version of it. And the cool thing about Enscape is you can use it for SketchUp, Rhino, and Revit. So when you install it, it'll ask you, do you want to install it for all three of those, or do you want to install it for only one of those? So you can pick which one that you want, and it'll install it. Something to know about that, though, is your laptop that you're running this on, or your computer, you have to have a dedicated graphics card. So if you're not super familiar with like computing stuff, basically if you look at your laptop right now and you look like near the trackpad, if you have a Windows, you should see a little sticker, and it'll either say GeForce, NVIDIA GeForce, or it'll say AMD Ryzen. If it says one of those two, you're pretty much good to go, and you can run Enscape just fine. If it does not say that, please let me know. Or if you're not sure if you have a dedicated graphics card, reach out to me individually and let me know, because that's kind of an issue, and we'll have to maybe try to find a way around it. But it's something that I run into every year. Inevitably, somebody has a problem where they're not able to run it. So if you don't have a dedicated graphics card or you can't run it, we're going to have to figure it out. All right. Rhino. So I don't have a module for Rhino in this class, the way that it's built out. But this year, hopefully in my live sessions, I'll be able to get into Rhino a little bit, because I want to cover some advanced things that I have learned the past year that are really super helpful. A lot of times in interior design, Rhino in the real working world doesn't have a huge lot of relevance. You're not going to use it too much for things. Architects use it a lot more than interior design people. You use it a lot in school just because it's a good free-form modeling tool for doing abstract things. But in reality, you're not going to use it for a ton of stuff in the real world. My goal with this is to show you some really cool new stuff that's come out for Rhino that makes it a lot more practical for what we will be doing in an actual interior design job, okay? So we don't have a module for it, but I'm going to get into it a little bit at some point during the live sessions. So you're going to want to make sure that you have Rhino and make sure that it's version 7. There is a trial on that if you've never downloaded it before. It's like 90 days, I think. So if you don't have it yet, wait, and I'll tell you when to download it, because the time will start ticking on that trial once you go ahead and download it. Adobe Photoshop, I mean, that's pretty standard. We use Photoshop all the time, so make sure you have that. And Adobe Acrobat. So if you've never used Acrobat, it's basically just a PDF manager application. And it's super helpful for when it comes to creating CD sets and getting all your sheets in the correct order and stuff, and combining PDFs. So we'll probably use Acrobat a little bit, so make sure it's installed, and you should have it, anyway, just because it's a good tool. So a little bit about grading. You're going to be evaluated in this class on a combination of lab assignments and online quizzes. So basically my quizzes, you're going to have one per module. There's a total of 4 modules throughout the entire class. Each one is like 2 to 3 weeks long. and they are 10 questions, and you'll have 30 minutes to do them. You can start them at any point, but there will be a set due date at the end of the module. And basically the questions, I'm not going to try to like trip you up and give you some really dumb, confusing question. It's all going to be pulled directly from my lecture videos, and it's going to just basically test your comprehension and keep you engaged in the class. So did you pay attention to the video, basically? It's just going to test you on things like that to make sure you're actually like watching the videos and keeping up with everything and staying on top of it. So as long as you're watching my lecture videos that I post, you should be totally fine. They're not like super hard. It's really just, did you pay attention and do you get this concept? And there's not going to be any like dumb fill in the blank questions where you have to type in answers. I hate those. I had this guy last semester at Akron. I had him for like every single class because they didn't have like any professors in the program I was in. So he taught literally like every class, and he was this like old guy who he was teaching technology, but it's like, should you be teaching technology? Because clearly you don't know how to use a computer. So when he would make his quizzes, he would set up pretty much half the questions to be these fill in the blank questions. And it's like, you have to type in something super specific. And if you even make one little typo, like if I add a space where there's not supposed to be a space, but I still got the answer right, it just marks it as wrong. And it's like, how was I supposed to read your mind and know that's what you wanted me to type in there? So I don't do dumb stuff like that because that's stupid. So it's all going to be either like matching or multiple choice. Okay, so really simple, straightforward. Usually there's like a bank of 20-ish questions, and it's just going to randomly pull 10 from that bank. So you don't have to worry too much about the quizzes. Just make sure you're paying attention to everything, you'll be fine. So we have 4 quizzes, and then we have 4 lab assignments, so 1 of each per module. First one is going to be over Revit, families. Then we're going to get into CD sets. After that, we're going to go into Enscape, and then we're going to get into SketchUp at the very end. And also the order is a little bit weird because I totally had to basically take what we did last year and flip it around for this year, because I don't know why they did this, but last year they made this a 10-week class that started at the start of the semester and ended 10 weeks into the semester. But now it's starting 5 weeks into the semester and ending at the end of the semester. So because of that, I've had to take what I had last year and really like basically reverse it and change a lot of stuff. So the order is kind of weird, and I'm still sorting through some of that, but hopefully we'll get that sorted out as we go. Grading scale, pretty standard. If you want A in the class, you're going to have to get at least a 93. And if you don't want to fail the class, make sure you don't get below a D. All the other stuff, let's see. Let's go over behavioral expectations really quickly and assignment due dates. So assignment due dates, I am very laid back, as I said, and I am very flexible, and I get when things come up and things that were out of your control happen, and it becomes an issue for you to get something done on time. I understand life and how it can throw you curveballs, and sometimes things just suck, and you can't deal with everything all at one time. Okay, I've been there. Everybody's been there. I get it. If something comes up and you're not able to get an assignment in on time, that can be okay, provided that you give me a good reason. And if it's something that you know about in advance, you give me fair warning, okay? If you email me after the fact and you don't have a good reason, or it's obvious that you just didn't do the assignment, I'm not going to be nearly as lenient. But if you contact me ahead of time and there's good communication back and forth, and I kind of like am aware and understand what you're going through, I'm much more willing to work with you and be flexible. So don't take advantage of my flexibility and willingness to be laid back when it comes to due dates. Because I want to help you, but I don't want you to abuse the system. So, like I said, I'll be flexible where I can, but you also have to be understanding and give me reasonable notice. Or if you can't inform me ahead of time, you should inform me like as soon as you can. You shouldn't like not turn something in and then wait like 3 days to email me and tell me. Like if something happens, just tell me like as soon as you can, and we'll work through those problems. Um, Behavioral expectations. So the main thing with this, uh, my kind of philosophy, and this is pretty standard, but I believe that respect given is respect earned. So as long as you are respectful to me, I'm going to be respectful to you. Um, so just make sure that your emails to me are professional, and that you're not just, I don't know, using bad language or anything like that. Like I'm chill and I'm laid back, but there still has to be a professor student relationship. Okay, we can be friends, but it's not like I'm your best friend you're gonna hang out with. So try to keep it as professional as you can when we're going back and forth with each other. Um, Also, in terms of assignments and behavior, I'm really good at catching people when they are kind of like sharing files back and forth. So that's something that I've run into a lot over the years teaching this classes. Um, there's just a tendency for people with digital classes like this to want to share files. And believe it or not, if you didn't know it, that's a form of plagiarism. So if I were to catch you one person doing most of the work on a assignment and then sharing that with somebody else, I can look at that file and know that you did that, and I can tell exactly who did what portion of what. Okay, I've caught a lot of people in the past doing it, and it's been a big problem. And I want to keep that to a minimum, and that's kind of also why I structure the course as loosely as I can, because I want there to be this back and forth relationship where I am flexible and I help you when you have a problem and we work through it. I don't want it to be you're confused about something, you don't get it, but you don't feel like you can come to me because you're not comfortable or something so that we can work through the problem. So then to get it done on time, you have to resort to sharing files or something like that. So I want to avoid that as much as possible, and just keep it honest. That's really all I want. Just keep it honest. I can tell when you did something, so that's all that needs to be said, and I think we'll be fine. Um, Let me see if there's anything else important. So there's not really anything else too important in here. Attendance policy, don't worry about that. I mean, your attendance is basically just going to be you doing the work and turning stuff in. Something that is important that I don't know if I have written in here is your data management stuff. So, like, if you are working on an assignment for this class or any class in the program, this is probably something that's been said before, hopefully. You really need to be using either an external hard drive or cloud storage, okay? You should never be saving your files in one place. That is just like using technology 101. Because if something bad happens and you only have it saved in one place, I've seen so many times where people like lose their entire projects and then they get screwed over at the very end when something is due because they saved it on their flash drive and that was the only place where they put it, and then they lost their flash drive. So always have a backup and always save your work in more than one place, okay? I'm fine with it being saved locally on your computer somewhere and then also saved to an external hard drive. But better yet, you should be using like cloud storage, just because it's going to give you more ways to recover the files in case something bad happens. So as a Kent State student, you have access to Google Drive and you have access to like unlimited storage on Microsoft OneDrive. So make sure if you are not using one of those to use them, because that's something that Kent State gives you. And just take advantage of it, because if you don't, there's a good chance something bad will happen, and we definitely don't want that. I can tell you from experience, I've never lost an important file and not been able to recover it using the cloud stuff that has been given to me from Kent. So I pretty much save all of my files to my Kent State University OneDrive account, and that is just nicely synced on my computer, and I can access my files on any device, and I never have to worry about losing anything. And then as a backup measure, sometimes I'll also put them external storage. So you should always do some sort of a combination of two things. So just avoid a single point of failure. If you come to me and say, I lost all my data because I only saved it in one place and the assignment's due and I can't do it, that's not going to be a legit excuse, and I'm not going to really feel that bad for you. So I'm just saying it now. Make sure that you have your storage set up in multiple places so that we can avoid crisis. All right? That's kind of it for the syllabus. I'm going to hop over to the schedule, but in the meantime, if anybody has a question, you can pipe up now and I will answer it. All right, so here's a look at our tentative schedule, and I like to say tentative because every year I make a schedule and I have a plan for things, and inevitably something comes up and I have to make changes. So I say tentative schedule, but it should stay pretty close to this, fingers crossed. So I have this broken down into 4 different modules for the course. First one is going to be Revit Review and Parametric Family Creation. All right, we're going to do that for the first 2 weeks of the class. This week we're going to introduce Revit families, and we're going to review some basic Revit concepts to get you guys caught up. And then week 2, we're going to get into some more custom Revit family creation type stuff. And then the things that we'll have due for the next 2 weeks is going to be the first quiz and the first lab. Okay? Module 2, we're going to get into Revit CD sets. So week 3, we're going to just do a basic overview of CD sets. Then we're going to get a little bit more specific into the Revit tools. And from there, it's really just getting into specific Revit concepts that go into CD set creation. And then you're just going to have quiz 2, lab 2. And you'll see a pretty consistent schedule in terms of what you're expected to turn in at the end of each module. So there's always going to be 1 lab assignment and 1 quiz. Okay? After that, we're going to do Enscape for 3 weeks and then SketchUp. Hopefully we'll get a full 2 weeks for SketchUp. I don't know. These two, I might switch around the amount of time we'll spend on each. So this might not be a full 3 weeks. I might put more time to SketchUp. We'll just have to see where we are when we get there, but hopefully we'll be able to find a good balance. I think if there's anything else. That's kind of it for the schedule. I'll go through the Canvas page now. Any questions at this point? Or are we all good? All right, I'll take that as an all good. So going to the Canvas page. On the home page, you're going to see the live lecture meeting link. So anytime that we meet, just use the same link. It's always just going to be the same room. I'm going to keep it easy and just go there and click it, and then we're just going to reuse the same room. Course modules. So I set up specific links for each module. So whatever week we're in, just use that link and it'll take you directly to it. Let me switch over to your view so that you can kind of see how it looks from your perspective. So when you click on that, it's just going to take you to the module, and this is what it's going to look like. And every week, I will add content to the module. So there's stuff that's in here that you're not seeing right now because it's tied to week 2. So once we get into week 2, when you click this link, it's going to show up with a list of week 2 stuff. So it's just going to keep adding on like that. So when you go to a module, basically you can expect there to be about this many items per week that you'll have to go through, and you can do this on your own time. Just make sure that you get it done before the end of the week. So I usually have like 1 or 2 lectures, and the lectures will be like this. So there's a lot of videos I have in here for Revit basics review stuff. So you'll just click on the page and then you'll get a link to my YouTube videos and you can watch all the videos like that. And actually, before I click off of this, one thing I want to note about the lecture videos, I've been there. I know how college is. I know how boring lectures can be and how much of a pain it can be to sit through like an hour or 2 lecture. So I get it, you can, and that's the reason why I set this up this way. So I upload all my stuff to my YouTube channel and then I embed it over here onto Canvas because of this magical feature. And that magical feature is the ability to change the playback speed. All right, so I recommend watching all these videos on 1.5 or 2 times so that you can breeze through these really quickly in half the time. I'm not going to be offended if you want to get through my lectures quickly. I get it. I want to do the same thing. So, that's what it's there for. That's why I link it like that, so that you can kind of breeze through these very, very quickly. So take advantage of the playback speed button, because that's why I go through all the trouble of uploading it to YouTube, is to save you guys time and make it easier and less painful for you. All right, so take advantage of that. And hopefully that means you guys will watch the videos more, because you won't have to worry about sitting through a full 2-hour video when you can get through it in just an hour. So going back to the module. So for this week, I want you guys to watch that review of just basic Revit concepts. And those videos are going to be pulled from older classes that I've taught. The reason for that being, I don't have a ton of time and the material is the exact same today as it was when I recorded these a year or 2 ago. So you can just watch those old videos and you're going to get a good review of exactly the same thing. So we're just going to use that. For the next thing after that, we're going to get into the actual content of the module, which is Revit families. So I have just one video lecture for that. Okay. And then sometimes when we have a lab assignment, there will be instructions that go along with it in the form of a PDF file. So this is kind of an example of what that'll look like. You just go in here and you can download this PDF file and you can go through it and use it as a guide to help you with the assignment. Let me see here. And then that's just more lecture type videos. Sometimes pay attention to this on these lecture videos. I will post required files here. And these are files that you will have to download in order to complete the assignment. So keep an eye out for like pieces of text around the video to make sure you have everything that you need to complete the assignment. All right. I usually put it right here at the top so that it's really obvious, so that you can see it. But just make sure you scroll all the way down to the bottom and like look and make sure you've downloaded all the files that you need. I'm going to switch out of the student view really quick to show you what the assignment like turn-in pages look like. So if I go back to modules here, this is kind of like the behind the scenes stuff, the stuff that is not released yet. Basically when week 2 opens, it'll just be more stuff like that. So when you get to an assignment drop page, I usually have really very specific instructions typed out to make it as clear as possible. So you'll want to go here before completing the assignment so that you know what all you need to build, okay? And this is just going to be all the required stuff. And it should be pretty easy to understand, hopefully. And then below that is your grading criteria. So this is the rubric. You'll know exactly what you're going to be graded on and what you need to focus on. So for example, for this first assignment, the total assignment is worth 40 points. A quarter of those points is just, did you complete all the steps? Okay? After that, did you put in all the correct parameters and did they flex properly? Then we have overall quality. How nice does it look? Did you do a good job? You know, pretty straightforward. So I give you the rubric so that you kind of understand what exactly I'm going to be assessing you on. But as long as you do what I say in the videos and you read these instructions and you do what they say, you should have no reason to worry about getting anything other than an A on all the assignments. Okay? And the way that I approach my lectures and my assignments is I usually like to walk you through them to help you understand. So I really want to guide you and not just throw you to the wolves and, you know, have you try to figure everything out on your own, because I know how complicated these programs are and how overwhelming it can be. So that's why I set it up like this. So for example, on this first lab, my walkthrough videos, there's 3 parts. They're going to show you exactly how to get through the entire thing. And as long as you follow all the steps that I do, exactly how I do them, you're going to get a good grade. All right. So I do that for all of my assignments and all of my classes. So just follow along with the videos. And we just want to make sure that you get from point A to point B and you do it right. Okay? So that's kind of the approach I take. Other than that, pretty straightforward. Does anybody have any questions before I go ahead and kind of get into some Revit stuff? All right. If nobody has any questions, we're going to do some Revit. While I'm going through this stuff, feel free to follow along if you are able. If not, just take notes. Or the other option is I am recording all of the live sessions and I will be posting them to the Canvas page after class. So if you need to go back and review some concept that I covered, they will be on the Canvas page under a folder called Live Sessions. And you can just click on it and rewatch the live session and it'll just look like this. Okay. So my original plan was to review some basic Revit concepts. If you remember, all of the Studio / Rep and Vis 3 instructors sent out a link to a survey that I made, basically asking you how comfortable are you with these different Revit concepts that I asked you about. So actually, let me see if I have that really quickly, because I kind of want to show you. I'm going to hide people's names, but I just want to give you an idea of where everybody is at a little bit. All right, so basically what we did, I asked you 20 questions, 20 different topics in Revit, and I asked you on a scale from 1 to 10, how comfortable are you with this particular topic? All right, so then I took all of those responses, put them into this Google Sheet, and basically this row at the top is a sum, or it's an average of these columns. So for each question, this is the average level of comfort with that particular topic. So anything that's green, you guys are pretty good on, according to you. So I'll take your word for it. Anything that is yellow, a little bit iffy, and anything that's red or orange, probably need some help on. So the big one that pretty much nobody is comfortable with is schedules, and that's fine. We're going to get into schedules later when we do CD sets, so I'm not too worried about that. And a lot of this other stuff too, really going back through the content of this course, I think that we're going to touch on most of it. So I'm not like super worried about reviewing it. Most of the basic things that you guys seem to be uncomfortable with that you need reviewed, I have covered in those review videos at the start of the module. So instead of me covering that tonight, I would prefer you guys to just watch that review stuff on your own. One, if you are comfortable with all that stuff, then you don't really need to watch those videos, so that's fine. But if you do need to review that stuff, then you'll be able to watch that at your own pace and get up to speed. So I'm going to leave all this Revit review stuff for those videos, and then anything else, I think we're going to kind of touch on it throughout the course. So I'm not like super worried about missing anything. But there might be a few things here or there that I might need to touch on during the live sessions. But today, I really want to get into Revit families, okay? And there shouldn't be too much of like a learning curve if you're confused with basic Revit stuff going to Revit families. It's kind of a totally different thing, all right? So we're going to go ahead and do that now. All right, so I don't know at this point how many of you have messed with Revit families. Maybe you've downloaded a Revit family from, like, say, a manufacturer's website, like a piece of furniture or something. And that's great. But another key skill that you guys need to have as a designer is the ability to get into the Revit family editor and either one, modify families that you've downloaded, or two, create families from scratch on your own. The reason for this, and kind of like the whole business model that me and my friend have with our company, is a lot of the families that exist online suck and they are terrible. And you'll download them and you'll put them into your file and they will break something, or they might just corrupt the whole model. So really, you need to know what to look for, what makes a good family, what makes a bad family, and you need to know how to fix it, one, if it sucks, or two, create it from scratch, okay? Let me give you a prime example of a family that is bad. So this family that I'm opening here is a family that a client gave me, and it's supposed to be a single table. Okay, and this is something that's on their website, and a big part of what I do is I'll have a client ask me to audit or go through their current library of Revit models and assess them for their quality and tell them, you know, what's wrong with it, what needs to be done, what needs to be fixed. So this is one that I got that just kind of made me laugh because it's so just weirdly bad. Okay, so really it's supposed to just be this one family here. And by itself, you know, that family would be fine. For some reason, when you load the family and open it, this is what you get. You get 2 copies of that family on top of each other, plus this third like base, I guess. But it's just bad, just the whole way that they set this up. So, I mean, obviously you don't want a table to look like this when you go to load into your project. And if it does, and you're like, what the heck, like I want to be able to use this table, you need to know how to go into the family file to fix it to make it work for what you need. Okay? So we're going to get started just with the basics. So first of all, over on the left side in Revit, we have 2 different sections. We have the models section and we have the family section. Models is going to be for your Revit project files, whatever you're doing your studio project in, that's where you're going to create that, the models section. Families is going to be over here. So the first thing that we want to do if we're making a new family is click on the new button. And while I'm doing this, something to note here, and I bring this up in those Revit review videos, very, very, very important. And I've heard from Jakisha that some of you have this problem and it needs to be fixed. So if you were to click on that button I just clicked on and it opens this window, some of you probably do not have all these files, okay? If that is you, pay close attention to the review videos because they cover how to fix that, because you're going to want to make sure that you have all these files. Same goes for creating a new model. So if I were to go up here to new model and choose a template file for my Revit project, some of you may not have anything in this list here, and that's a bad thing. So if you don't have anything in this list or you don't have anything in this folder, make sure you watch that video where I discuss that and show you how to fix it. And if you still have problems, make sure you tell me, because that has to be fixed, because you're going to run into a lot of problems if you don't fix it. So what we want to do when we go to create a new family is, if you're in a newer version of Revit, like 2022, 2023, you're going to want to go here to English Imperial. And this is going to be your list of Revit family template files. Okay? So basically, when you're starting to create a new family from scratch, you need to have in your head an idea of what that family is supposed to be. So what is its category? Up until now, maybe you've run into categories in Revit. If you've tried to override visibility settings and you bring up the visibility controls, there will be a list, like a tabled list of all these different categories. And that's kind of how Revit just handles objects. So Revit is what's called a BIM software. Okay, BIM is an acronym, BIM, Building Information Modeling. And let me see, I'm gonna see if I could type that in the chat. I'll type in Notepad so that you can see it. Whoops. All right. BIM, and you'll be quizzed on this. Acronym. Stands, whoops, if I can type, my goodness, for building information modeling. All right, so that's going to be the big buzzword that you're going to hear throughout the industry when you're working professionally. Everything nowadays is BIM, 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 whereas in the past it was AutoCAD or CAD, okay? CAD was the old acronym, and that stood for Computer Aided Design. Sometimes you'll also see CAD with 2Ds, and that will be like drafting. and design. Okay? Oh my gosh. You get the idea. So CAD, that's the old acronym. Nowadays, pretty much everything is BIM, okay? BIM, the whole idea around BIM, any kind of BIM software, is it's intelligent and it knows things about what you're building in the file. So when we draw a wall, when we create a wall, it's like actually a wall, and Revit sees that as a wall with physical properties in the real world. So it's going to have real materials. It's going to have, like, say, drywall. It's going to have wood or metal studs. It's going to have all that those layers of information built into it. Okay? That's where the information comes in. So we're trying to make our model as intelligent as possible to streamline the entire process. CAD, on the other hand, I don't know if you have used AutoCAD before in the past, or Rhino, I guess. You could kind of replicate the same thing. It's what we like to call dumb software. So anything that you have to do in it, you have to do manually by hand. All right? So if I want to draw a wall in CAD is not a wall. A wall is a series of lines that you've trimmed and drawn manually to look like a wall. Okay? So that's kind of the difference. It's a dumb tool where you're doing everything manually, whereas this is an intelligent tool that understands what you're doing. It's built specifically for architecture and interior design. It's intelligent, all right? And we want to take advantage of its intelligent capabilities. So that's why nowadays we're using BIM software, because it's way faster. It streamlines the entire process of doing a project from start to finish. And that's why it's become the dominant technology the last few years, and it's only going to get bigger and bigger. So here's a warning: if you don't like Revit, you better learn to like it, or else you might not like interior design, because that is kind of where the entire industry is heading. Everything is going toward Revit, and you're going to be using it professionally, guarantee you. Okay, so getting off of that tangent, like I said, it's intelligent. So every object is a specific thing to Revit. So a door is a door, right? A piece of casework is a piece of casework. Baluster is a baluster. So we have these template files that we are going to use for our family that is going to tell Revit what that thing is, so that when we go to put this into a project, we can intelligently create views that reflect what we're trying to achieve. So let's say we want to make a furniture plan view, right? We can set up a template, a view template, that's going to have furniture visible on the plan, okay? And since we built this as a piece of furniture with the furniture template, Revit will know, oh, that thing that you built that you loaded into here, that's a piece of furniture. I want to hide that, or I want to show that. Same with all of these. So that's why we use template files, okay? Another key important aspect of these files, which we'll get more into it as we go, because it's just kind of an inherent nature of Revit, is the concept of hosting, okay? And hosting is also covered in my Revit review videos. So if you watch those, I go over hosting. And if you don't know what that is, you'll get a good sense of it watching those. Basically, because Revit is intelligent, you have to tell it like things that should be attached to other things, if that makes sense. So for example, if I'm going to build a light fixture, let's say I want to build like a pendant light that's hanging from a ceiling, okay? I want to build a light fixture that is ceiling based. So if I were to go to the light fixtures section of these templates, you can see I have ceiling based, and then I have wall based, and then I just have a light fixture, which is not based on anything at all. So example of just a plain light fixture would be like a lamp. I can put a lamp anywhere. I can set it on a table. If I want to, I could put it on a floor. Whatever I want to do, I can put it wherever I want. So that's a case where you don't want to associate the light fixture to a specific type of thing, like a ceiling or a wall. Okay, you just want it to be its own thing. Wall-based, that would be like a sconce. Okay, so if I built this light fixture as a wall-based component, when I go to my Revit project and I go to place this light, Revit's only gonna want to let me place it stuck to the face of a wall. Okay? And then ceiling based is going to be most familiar to us. That's going to be pretty much any other type of light fixture. So 99% of the light fixtures will be ceiling based. Any kind of recessed can light, any kind of pendant light. Maybe it's a fan that has light fixtures attached to it. That's all going to be ceiling based, so that when we go to a reflected ceiling plan and we're coming up with a lighting layout, we can place our models in and stick them right to the ceiling, and they'll show up in our reflected ceiling plan. Okay, so you want to make sure you know the end use case for whatever you're building, so that in the beginning you choose the correct template file to go off of. Most of the time though, you won't have to worry about too many of these. So I can tell you from experience, being like a professional Revit family modeler, I only use maybe 4 of these, and you probably won't really have to use very many of them either. So the main ones that I use, and this is the one you use most of the time, generic model. Okay, this is just an object basically. Has nothing really specific tied to it, no defining characteristic. Maybe it's just like a decoration or something. Anything that's really general will fall under generic model. The other big ones are light fixtures. But I'd say the second biggest one that I use is furniture or furniture system. So if you really just kind of stick to light fixture, ceiling based, generic model, and furniture, that'll be like 99% of the stuff that you'll ever have to worry about. Okay? All right, so enough of my blabbing about boring template files. I'm going to go ahead and open the generic model template and kind of walk you through the Revit Family Editor a little bit. Okay, so not sure if any of you guys have ever been in here before, but the Revit Family template, Revit Family environment looks a little bit different than just the regular project environment. So if I were to open a project really quickly, going to look something like this, right? We have an empty space. It's just like an infinite space of whiteness, and you have these 4 elevation markers. Whereas if I were to go back to the Revit Family environment, you have these 2 dashed green lines, okay? So what these green lines are is they're something called reference planes. And reference planes are basically things that we stick our 3D shapes to, and they help them to move and be positioned correctly. We'll get more into that in a minute. I don't want to go too deep into it right now. Where these 2 reference planes cross, the intersection, that's what's known as the origin of the file. Okay, so that is the very center point of this model. And you always want to be building your models as close to the origin as you can. Anytime I build something, it's pretty much going to be centered exactly on the origin. And that's a really good rule of thumb by default, and I will show you why here in a minute. So we get a few different tabs too. Okay, you can ignore all of my tabs here from Enscape onward, because that's all external stuff I've downloaded. But we get the Create tab, Insert tab, Annotate, View, Manage, and Add-ins tab. Whereas if I'm in a project, you'll see these change. We get all this other stuff. So project is a lot more complicated in terms of tools that we have available to us. Okay? Going back to the family, what you're really going to want to worry about is create and annotate. The third one will be modify. And modify is just going to appear dynamically as you're doing things. But really create and annotate because we're going to be using dimensions a lot and we're going to be creating 3D shapes. Okay? So in terms of 3D shapes, what we have is we have 5 things to choose from. I'm sorry, 6 things to choose from. We have extrusion, blend, revolve, sweep, swept blend. And the last one is void forms. So void forms, if you click on this, it's the exact same thing as those other 5 tools, except they have the word void in front of them and they look a little bit different. So they're kind of the opposite. You can think of them as the opposite of these 5 tools, okay? So all of these tools, whoops, let me get out of here. All of these tools are what are known as solid tools, okay? So if I were to make let's just do an extrusion. If I were to make an extrusion here, that's going to appear just as a basic box, right? It's a solid box. Void is the absence of a solid. So a void will cut things away, right? So if I were to create a void extrusion, what I could do is click on void extrusion, and then again, I'm going to draw another shape over top of my old shape. And at the point where those two intersect, it's going to cut a hole, okay? So you can make that anything you want and it'll update and it will cut away from the solid. So that's the first basic concept is void versus solid. All right, so now that we kind of understand that, let's get into what these actual tools do. And if you're familiar with Rhino, which I know a lot of you are, you're going to see a lot of overlap in the concepts between the two in terms of like how you build geometry. So extrusion, what I just did, and a really cool thing about Revit too, if you don't understand something, just hover your mouse over the tool and let it sit there, and you're going to get a little video that pops up and explains to you what that tool does and how it's used. So if you get confused and don't know what you need to be using, just hover your mouse over it, it'll give you an idea. So as this says, all we're doing is we're drawing a profile, right? So if I click on that, we're in sketch mode. Hopefully you're familiar with sketch mode. That's when the ribbon up here turns green and you get your drawing tools, okay? So we want to be working in a 2D view, like our floor plan here. Reference level, that's going to be our top-down floor plan view. So when you're in sketch mode, you get your tools here. And for instance, we have circle, right? We have rectangle, polygon. We can choose how many sides of that we want. It's another thing. You'll get options here when you can do different things with the specific tool that you're on. So when I change this, it'll change the options that I have available to me. Okay. Arcs, splines, you know, all kinds of drawing tools. Basically though, all we're doing is we're drawing a custom shape that we want. So let's see, let me just make something a little bit, you know, abstract, I guess. So I'll just use lines and I'm just going to draw some random shape. Right, so that's my profile, is just that shape I drew that's in pink lines. Now that I'm done with that, I hit the green check mark. That's going to take me out of the drawing mode or edit mode. And if I go to a 3D view right here, default 3D view, it's going to show me what that looks like. So an extrusion is really good for basic shapes that are only 3-dimensional, like in one direction, right? We're just taking that profile and we're pulling it straight upward and kind of lofting in between the two. So if you're familiar with Rhino, you'll understand the loft command. You have two profiles and you kind of bridge the two of them to fill the space in between. That's all an extrusion is. The next one is a blend. So a blend is a slightly more complicated extrusion. This is where you take two different profiles and you make the in-between. Like Revit's going to try its best to like make what's in between the two. So going back to the loft command in Rhino, you could draw two totally different like weird shapes and then use the loft tool, and it's going to create like a weird like morph between the two profiles. Same thing here. So if I were to, let's say, draw a hexagon. Now maybe I want to do, yeah, okay, so let's just draw a hexagon there. Once I do that, I have to go here to this where it says edit top. So I just drew the bottom profile, which you can see here. The bottom profile is the bottom part of that plus sign, okay? So now the top profile is going to be the top part of it. So I hit edit top, and then I can draw another hexagon, but maybe this time I'll rotate it like 45 degrees or something. Let's go 30. So rotate that 30, and now we're going to click Finish Edit Mode. And now you can see, you get a little preview here in the top view of kind of what's happening. So it's twisting. So if I go back to my 3D view, you can see I have a smaller hexagon on top, and it's blending between the two, and it's kind of making a twisting shape. So that's what blends are really good for. Anything that's like smaller on one side than the other, but has a 3D depth to it, you want to use a blend for. Or any kind of weird shape that you want to get like a cool like morph between. So that's a blend. Next one is a revolve. So what a revolve does is you get a central axis, and you're going to draw basically a cross section of a 3D shape. Okay, so a really good demonstration for this is going to be, let's just say I want to make like a wine glass. So if I want to make a wine glass, I'd want to make sure I'm in a elevation view. So I'm going to go to my front elevation, and I want to make sure that I start my wine glass here at the origin. So the origin is going to be right here where it says reference level. Basically your reference level is your ground plane. So if I were to put this into my Revit file and I drew this at the ground plane, it's going to sit it flat on the ground. Okay. This vertical line is this line, or it's it's this line here. This one running top to bottom. It's the same line, but it's in 3D. So if I'm back in my front elevation, that's just that line vertically, basically. So I want to be right at the middle of those. Now the first thing I need to do is establish my axis line. So the axis line is going to be the central pivot that your shape or profile is going to like spin around. Okay, so I'm going to draw an axis line. I'm going to set my work plane. I'll get into that in a minute on what I'm doing here. Don't want to skip over that. Set my work plane. So now I'm drawing in my front view. So click on axis, and my axis line is just going to be here on my middle plane going vertical. And this line doesn't matter. It can be any length. It truly doesn't matter, but you have to make sure it's going in the direction that you want the shape to spin around. Okay? That's all it's there for. If I were to put it like this, like that's going to spin it like at an angle, which I don't want. I want to make sure it's going perfectly vertical. So then the next thing is drawing your profile. So this is where you use boundary lines. So if you look at that little example there, the pink is my profile. So that's why I'm going to be using this tool to draw. The blue is my axis line. And you can kind of see the 3D shape there, what's happening. So we're going to be drawing the pink cross section, and we're going to be spinning it in 360 degrees around that blue dashed line, and it's going to make that like thimble shape that you're seeing there, or spool shape that you're seeing there. So if I were to do this as a wine glass, first I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm drawing half of the wine glass. So I'm going to draw the flat base there. And then I'm going to go here and I'm going to establish kind of where the stem is. So I'm just going to draw a little vertical piece right there. Okay, so let's say that's my stem. Now I need to connect my stem to my base. And if you think about a wine glass, it's kind of got like a little bit of a curvature and kind of like a little taper to where it meets up with the base. So for that, I could use a spline. Okay, so using my spline tool, I'm just going to draw like a little shape here. And I want to make sure that the end of it, and you click a few times to get these points, I want to make sure that my end point here ends right there at my base, at the end of it. After I draw my spline, I can then go and grab these points and edit them. So maybe I want this to be vertical here at the end. And then where it meets up with this side, you want this to line up straight with the vertical part. So you see how that gray line is perfectly straight with the pink line? That's what you want for it to look correct. So, and then the middle point, you can kind of do whatever you want with it. Okay, so there's my base. Then for the top part, you could do that in a few different ways. So maybe the best way to do that is establish how tall this is. So proportionally, maybe somewhere like here at 3.5 inches. And I'm not using realistic dimensions at all, just don't worry about that. But now I could use something like an ellipse. Okay, what an ellipse does, it's basically like an oval. With this, I can start at the midpoint of this line, and then I could go here to this endpoint that I established, and then drag out to the right to get how wide this is. So now maybe I want it to go somewhere even with like my base here would be fine. So now that I have that in there, I want to chop this off, and I want a flat top here where I would actually drink out of the wine glass. So I'm just going to draw a line kind of cutting through this, and you can go in and move it up and down with your nudge tools after the fact to fine tune it. So maybe something in there is good. And then we have to clean all of this line work up so that it actually is a correct profile. Because right now, obviously if I hit OK, it's going to give me an error. I can't have any overlapping lines. So this has to be a nice, cleanly drawn profile in order for it to work correctly. So to do that, you have to get familiar with these modify tools. Okay. The modify tools are the exact same in a Revit project environment as they are in the Revit family. So it's going to look very consistent going from the Revit project file over here to the family editor. So what I want to do is use the split tool. So what the split tool does is it lets you hover over an element and kind of chop it in half with an X-Acto knife so you can edit it. So if I click on split element, I'm going to cut my ellipse in a couple different spots. I'm going to cut it here, and I'm going to cut it somewhere down here. So now that I've done that, hit escape a couple times, I have two separate pieces, and I can delete this one away. Okay. Next thing I need to do is I need to zoom in here where I made this little line going back to the center, and I need to get rid of it. So I'm going to delete that. All right. Then we should have everything that we need to finish this profile. So to finish the profile, you can clean it up with this tool, and I use this tool all the time, so make sure you know how to use it. This is the Trim Extend to Corner tool. So what this does, if we click it, is it lets you click on two lines and automatically trim this up and make it like a nice joint. Okay, so when you use this tool, you basically want to click on the side of the line that you want to keep. So in this case, I want to keep this part of the line, and I want to keep this part of the line. And then the other two extensions go away. So to reiterate, if I were to click on this side of the line and this side of the line, it's going to get rid of the wrong thing. So you have to make sure you're clicking on the right part of the line to get it to do what you want. Okay, so again, I'm just going to do this and this. And then we're going to do this to the vertical pink line here. And then we're going to do this line here to this vertical line. And sometimes you get these little errors. That's fine in this case. So that means that it's just taking this line and disconnecting it from this pink line, which is fine. So you just hit unjoin elements. And then we have to finish this off by connecting this line down to our base. Okay, so there's the finished profile. And if I were to hover over one of these lines and hit my tab key, if everything turns blue, you know that it's good. Okay, you know that you're pretty much good to go. If it doesn't, you probably have like a little mistake somewhere that you need to correct. Okay, and then you can go in and fix it. But hovering over it, hitting tab, that's a really good test to see if something is wrong. Another thing that happens a lot is sometimes when you're drawing something, you'll get duplicate lines and you don't realize it. So for example, if I were to draw another pink line on top of this, that's bad, and Revit tells me that it's bad. But if I'm looking at this and I don't know that that line is there, I might think it's okay. And then I go to finish this and Revit's like, you can't have overlapping lines. What are you doing? And I'm like, well, what the heck? Like, I don't see an overlapping line. So what I like to do is I like to do the test where I tab and make sure everything is blue. Then I click on this and I use this tool right here. So this is copy to clipboard. You can click on this button, or you can use Control C, or you can hit Control X, and that will cut the profile onto your clipboard and get rid of it here. Now I can see that pink line that's overlapping, and I can highlight it and get rid of it. Okay, so then to bring back my profile, I go here to Paste, and I choose Aligned to Same Place. And that's going to put it right back where it was, and I should have no errors. Then when I hit the check mark, it's going to finish my revolve. And if I go to 3D view, you're going to see I have a little wine glass that has a filled top to it. So that's one more thing I forgot to show you. So let me fix that. So if you want to modify an element after it's created, go ahead and click on it and then hit the edit button right here. So edit revolve. So now we have to draw in that void part where the wine glass is actually hollow on the inside, because right now it has a flat top, which we don't want. So to do that, there are a few different ways we could do it, but I'm going to do it this way to show you the offset tool. So what the offset tool does, if you've never used it before in Rhino, is it lets you take a line and it lets you either move it inward and make a copy of it inward or outward based on a set dimension that you specify. So in this case, what you want to do is click on the line you want to offset, and basically what I want to do is copy this line here inward to make sort of like an inner wall to the wine glass. Okay, so I'm going to use this tool here, the Pick Lines tool. So what the Pick Lines tool does is it lets you basically hover over a line and like redraw it. Oh wait, no, actually I don't want to use Pick Lines. What am I thinking? I want to use the offset tool here. All right. So what the offset tool does, like I said, lets you make a copy. So my distance that I want to offset this, I want to offset it so that it's the same thickness here as it is here on my stem. So like half of like my stem width. So to get that dimension, I'm going to measure between these points, and you can see that it's like a really weird, if it's hard for you guys to see, it says 47 over 256. So it's also showing it up here. So 47 over 256. So you can actually go up here, which is kind of cool. You can highlight that and you can right click and copy it. So you don't have to remember that. Okay, so now that I have that, go back here and use my offset tool. We're going to type, or we're going to hit Control V to paste that in. So now that's set. And then I want to hover over my edge line here. So if you hover over it, this is kind of like a sensitive tool to where if you hover over it a certain way, it's gonna give you a preview of it offsetting outward. If you hover over it the other way, it's gonna offset it inward. Notice we also get this option here to copy it, and we want to keep that checked on because I want to make a duplicate of this line and I don't want to delete the original one. So I'm going to keep that on and click once, and it's going to make that copy for me inward. All right. Then what I'm going to do is use my trim connect to corner, and I'm gonna do this line to, of course it's not gonna let me. I'm just gonna click on this and use my grip. Sometimes with like offsetting arcs it gets a little weird. I'm just gonna move my grip inward like that to finish that off. And then up here I'm gonna kind of like drag it up here so we get some thickness. Usually you won't have to do that though. It'll usually just work, but in this case I'll manually like connect the two of these together. So there we kind of have an inner wall. And then to finish these off at the top, we could just do this and make it like a flat edge at the top. But what I like to do is actually round this off a little bit. So you have this tool here called the fillet arc tool, which is cool. What this does is it lets you click on 2 points. Of course, it's not going to do it for me now that I'm doing an arc. Sometimes these shapes are really weird and they don't like work. A good example would be like a corner like this. So I could click on fillet arc and then click these two, and then I can make like a nice like rounded joint between the two of them. So it's not like a hard edge. But in this case, it's not going to let me, so whatever, we'll just leave it like that. So then we'll click OK. We'll go back here, and you can see now I have a nice like open area inside my wine glass, and it looks more real. Okay, so that's the revolve tool. Drawing a profile, spinning it around a central axis. Okay. Third tool is going to be sweep. So what a sweep does is it basically takes a profile. Let me go back to the tooltip here to show you the little animation. Basically takes a profile, and it's going to take it and it's going to extrude it along a path. Okay, so in this little video you can see they're drawing the path now. Then they're going to draw the profile, and then when it extrudes it, it basically is like, it's like a snake, and it like just makes the profile follow that path. Good use cases for this in a project environment or in real life. If you think of like crown molding or a baseboard, kind of how it wraps around the edge of a room, you would use the sweep tool to replicate things like that in Revit. Okay, so things like crown molding or I don't know. I use it a lot for like when I'm doing furniture, for like legs of furniture. So a lot of the furniture I build is like industrial stuff that has like metal pipe legs. And a lot of times I have to use sweeps to build that type of geometry. So let's just click on that really quick. So basically, if I'm in a front view, no, I'm in the top view. If I'm in a front view, set my plane. Let's say I wanted to make like, I'll show you what I do on a daily basis, like if I'm making those metal tube legs. So let's say I have one leg here. Whoops, I want to do that. I want to first click on here where it says sketch path. So I want to define the path. So I want to start by drawing that, and then I want to draw it over here, and then over here. Okay, and now I want these legs to be equally spaced from the center point of my origin. So to do that really quickly, I'm going to use my dimensions. And if I dimension from the left to the middle to the right, I can see that those are matching. But if I want to make them stay matching, I want to hit this little button here called equality. And I'm going to get more into equality and constraints in a minute. But what constraints do is they let you create relationships between geometry. So for example, if I were to click on this line and move it in or out, you can see how the left one moves in or out with it relative to the center point of the model. Okay, so that's kind of cool. So I'm going to link those together like that. Then what I'm going to do is draw a I'm going to use the fillet arc tool like I showed you before, and I'm going to draw like a little arc between these on both sides. And then I want to make these the same arc radius. So I'm going to click on one side and I'm going to edit this. So right now it's set to 3/4 of an inch. So let's do like 1 inch. Okay, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click on this one, click on the little dimension, and I'm going to type in 1 inch. Enter. So now they're the same. So there's my path that I want my legs to go along. Now I'm going to hit the green check and I'm going to say, okay, path is good. Done with that. Next part of this is the actual profile that gets swept along the path. So to do the profile, you have to click on Edit Profile right here. And when you click on that, it's going to pretty much always take you to another view to draw it. And the reason for that is this is the point where you're drawing the profile, this little plane here. And if you think about this in 3D space, the profile is basically perpendicular to your current view. And I'll show you that in 3D because that's kind of hard to wrap your mind around if you're not familiar with working in 3D. So I'm in a 3D view right now, so this hopefully like illustrates the point a lot better. I have my path here, and then if you look at the actual point where I'm going to be drawing my profile, it's perpendicular to that path, okay? And if I were in a front view and I tried to draw it, it's not going to work. I need to be in like in a top-down view or like a 3D view with an angle where I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so now I want to draw my profile. So I'm going to hit Select Profile, Edit Profile, and then I get into the Edit Profile settings, and you can see that right here. So I want to make this like a tube. So I'm going to use a circle as my profile. So I'm going to click on the circle. I'm going to click on the center point of my my plane, and I'm going to click on Show Plane so you can see that. So this is the 3D plane that I'm drawing on, this kind of like blue square. Okay. So as I draw, you can see it's like stuck to that 3D plane. So I'm going to draw that circle, and I'm going to exit out of that, hit escape a few times. Then I'm going to click on the circle and edit this to be a radius of, let's say, 1/2 inch. Okay. These are going to be some chunky legs, I guess. So we'll click OK, and then we'll click OK again, and you can see what that does. So these are some really short, stocky, chunky legs, but you can get the idea. So it's taking that circle and it's extruding it along that path. And anytime I make an adjustment to that path, it's going to change the way that the shape is being swept along it. So if I were to add to that path, for example, and just make there a hard 90-degree corner here, when I finish that, it's going to add to it, and it's going to add that hard 90-degree transition as opposed to the smooth radius transition that I built in previously. So that's what the sweep tool does. And then the last one is swept blend. And swept blend, honestly, you're barely going to use this, so I don't really, I'll demo it really quick, but don't worry too much about this one. This one is kind of like really, really use case specific. I almost never use this tool. So swept blend, pretty much the same as a sweep. It's exactly what its name implies. It's a sweep, but it's also a blend. So you're taking two different profiles and you're blending them across like a path that you draw. So if I draw a path, the only catch to this tool is you can only draw one line segment for the path. So if I were to draw, let me do this in a floor plan view. It's going to be a lot easier to demonstrate. If I were to draw like an arc as my path, if I try to add to this path rev, it's going to yell at me. It's not going to let me do two segments when I try to click OK. See that? More than one segment not allowed. So you can only do one. Okay. This is why it's a really dumb tool, because it's super limited. So let's say that's my path. Click OK. Then you get the option to draw the two profiles. So we have one profile on this end, one profile on this end. So I'm going to do select profile 1, edit profile. Now it's going to prompt me to go to a view where I can edit that profile like I did before. So I'm going to go to my 3D view, 3D, and I'm going to draw my first profile, and let's make that a circle. Okay. Then we're going to draw the second profile, and let's make it let's just do a hexagon again. Okay. Then we'll click OK. And now you'll see what that did. So it took a circle and it tried to make the in-between of whatever exists between a circle and a hexagon. So it's a very weird tool, and you're pretty much never going to use it unless you're doing something like really like crazy abstract and you need to use it. But for the most part, you can kind of forget that that thing exists. Okay. The other tools, like I said, these are voids. So they are the exact same thing as what we just did, except they are the subtraction version of it. And you can actually make something that has been created as a solid into a void by clicking on it and going here where it says identity data. You can switch it from solid to void and click apply, and that's going to make it like a void. Again, we'll get more into voids here in a little bit, especially in like the first assignment. We'll use voids a little bit, but sometimes you just have to use them. But most of the time, you're going to stick with these 4 tools. Actually, no, don't worry about blend too much either. Really, it's just extrusions, revolves, and sweeps. And then the void versions of those. So void extrusion, void revolve, void sweep. Okay? Coming from Rhino, that probably is super like limited sounding. And it's like that for a reason. Okay? The reason is Revit is built as a parametric modeler. So you might have heard of that word before. Revit is a parametric modeler. Okay, so what a parametric modeler is a 3D application that lets you make geometry intelligent, right? Going back to what I was saying before, Revit, as dumb as it may seem sometimes with how annoying it is, and you know, I get it, it sucks for a lot of things. It is really intelligent in some ways. And being a parametric modeler, what we can do is some pretty cool stuff. Okay, so I could sit here and try to explain it, but I'm just going to show you instead because that's way easier for me to illustrate and for you guys to get, I think. So parameters, hopefully you have heard that word before. A parameter is basically any setting in Revit that you can change that's associated with like an object. If I go up here to this window here, this window is called the Family Types window, okay? And what this is, if I were to click on it, hopefully it looks familiar. This window is basically your settings window within a Revit project file. Okay, let me hop over to the project again. Let's say I want to place just a default piece of furniture. So if I go to Insert, actually no, Architecture Component, and there's always a desk in here by default, so we're going to place the desk. Okay. There's my desk in the plan view, and when I click on it, you can see over here on the left side, first of all, I get some information about the desk. Constraints, identity data, phasing, IFC parameters, whatever. What I'm interested in right here is edit type. So when I click on edit type, this is the exact same window that we looked at in the family editor. Okay? So family desk, and then we have these types here. So I click down the drop down menu. We have 3 different types of desks that we can choose from: 60 inch by 30 inch, 60 inch by 30 inch student, 72 inch by 36 inch. And all these types are doing, basically you can think of these as presets, okay? These types are presets that change these parameters, okay? So we have dimension parameters for changing height, width, depth, leg height, whatever, changing the size of the 3D object. We have material and finish parameters. So if we wanted to change the finish that is on the top of the desk versus the finish that's on the actual sides of the desk, or like the base of the desk, we can change all those there. So we get control over body material, handle/leg material, top material. Okay, let me go to 3D view to show this a little bit better. That's also a cool little tool there if you have never used it before. If you click on something in a 2D view and you want to see that exact thing in 3D, this little button right here is called Selection Box, and that will take you to a 3D view that is cropped to only that object. So that's super helpful, because working in 3D is always better and easier to understand than working in 2D. So that's what I like to do. Okay, so let me hide that little box. There we go. Okay, so there's our desk, right? If I go to a realistic view so you can see the materials a little bit better. That's what the materials that are on this thing look like right now. So if I click on it again and I go back to my edit type settings, with my controls I can change materials, and hopefully you've changed materials on things before and you've done it in other classes, and this is all review. That's great if that's the case. But just to illustrate what a parameter is, make sure we're all clear. If I were to copy the name right here, laminate ivory matte, for this body material, and paste it over top of the top material, you're going to see that the top material is now the same as the body material, right? So we get control over the material that's applied to that geometry. If I were to change the dimensions, obviously, let's say I want to make a new version of this desk. Let's say I want to make a version that is 72 by 30. So if I duplicate this, and let's call this one 72. Actually, there might be a 72 by 30 already. No, there's not. Okay, 72 by 30. So if I were to make the width now 72 inches, right, you're going to see that the desk is going to become wider, because obviously we're changing that dimension parameter. So now that is a 6 foot wide desk as opposed to a 5 foot wide desk. So if I go back to the 60 inch, hang on. There we go. So you can see it got bigger. It made it bigger, right? So that's a dimension parameter. So a parameter is anything that we can build to change things and get different sizes of things or different materials of things. And that's why Revit is intelligent. You could very well build this desk without any parameters, but that would be defeating the purpose of Revit and what it can do. Like, why would I want to build this desk and not be able to modify it in any way? It's just stupid. If you want to take advantage of Revit, you want to make sure you understand parameters and you can make the family as flexible as possible so that you can go into a project, and if I need something that's like narrower to fit a particular space or wider, I can just click on it, change the dimension, and make it fit the space. Okay, so that's the idea. All right. So this is going to be one of the last things that we cover tonight. We still have 20 something minutes. So we're going to cover this really quick, and then we'll call it. But let's say I want to show you how to make a dimension parameter. So what we want to do, well, first of all, before I do that, I have to talk about reference planes. So at the very beginning, I told you about these 2 green lines that we see here. These are reference planes, and you always have 2 of them like this as crosshairs in the center of your family template all the time. They define the origin, and you always want to be centered on the origin when you make something. So whenever we make new pieces of geometry, we want to start out by thinking of it as like a human body, I guess, okay? If you think about your body, you have a skeletal system. You have all kinds of systems. But for our case, we have a skeletal system. And everything moves with the skeletal system. So as you move your muscles, like the skeletal system is like what holds it together and makes things like move properly. If you didn't have a skeleton, you'd just be a blob of jelly, and how useful is that then, right? So we want to basically create a skeletal system for geometry so that we can make it move in a predictable way. So if I were to build just a simple parametric box, just a simple shape that I can control the height, the width, and the depth of, to start out, what I want to do is go to create, and I want to go to reference plane. You also have this thing called reference line, but honestly, I would not worry about that. I pretty much never use those. Reference planes are what you really want to focus on. So we want to draw reference planes, and you can do this either by clicking on the button here, or if you look at the little name there where it says reference plane, it says parentheses RP next to it. Okay, so that's basically the hotkey. So if I hit RP, it's going to create that for me instead of clicking on the button. So I can just hit RP, and now you can see it says modify reference plane. So to start, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw 4 of these. So 1 on each side. And you don't have to, when it comes to reference planes, you don't have to worry about placement or length. Doesn't matter. They just have to be in there. So I'm just going to draw 4 of them wherever. But I want to make sure that they're on either side of the vertical line in the center, and they're on either side of the horizontal line in the middle there. So just like that. So we want basically 4 quadrants, 1, 2, 3, 4. After we do that, we're going to create some constraints. So constraints are basically the things that tell Revit how to make geometry move. Okay, that's how we draw our or create our parameters that we can edit in that parameter window. Okay, so right now there's no controls over dimensions in here. So we're going to create those now. First thing, we want to go to the Annotate tab, and we want to use the aligned dimension. So you can see the shortcut for that is DI. So DI. And the first thing you want to do is make sure that everything is equally spaced. So that's where those EQ dimensions come in that I showed you prior. So what I'm going to do is click on the first reference plane, click on the middle, click on the right. Then I'm going to drag off into space here, click one more time, and then you can see the dimensions don't match. So we want to click EQ to tie those together and make them centered on this vertical line. And we can test it. So if I click on one of them and move it in or out, the other one should move equally with it in or out. Then I'm just going to do the same for the other one, like this. So now if I move that one in or out, it moves up or down, the same. Okay, so after we have those established in our floor plan view, right, we're in a top-down view, we want to name these so we can understand basically what they are. This is optional. If you know what you're doing, you don't always have to name them, but sometimes you do. But to name these, you just click on them and then click on this little click to name button, and you can give them a name. So in this case, I'm going to call it front, right? Since we're in a top-down view, this is going to be my front view, or my front plane. This one is going to be back. This one is going to be left. And then this one's going to be right. Okay, so we basically have all 4 sides of our box in a plane view. The last dimension is height though. So to draw that in, we have to go to an elevation. So I'm going to go to my front elevation. And you can see I have two reference planes here on either side. So that is just these, this left and this right. These are three-dimensional. So you're going to see them in the top view and you're going to see them in the front view because they're like three-dimensional actual planes, right? If I go to a 3D view just to illustrate really quick, sorry, I get off on tangents, just want to make sure it's clear. If I were to click here on set plane and then set my plane to be, let's say, the right plane that I drew, I can click on show, and that's going to give you a preview of that. So it's actually, this is the reference plane, it's actually a 3D object, right? And when we're in floor plan view, we're just seeing like this side of it from the top down. So it looks like a line. And then when we're in the front elevation view, if I click on my little view cube here, now I'm in the front and I'm seeing what it looks like vertically. But in reality, it's actually a 3D thing. And we're just seeing like, you know, the thinnest like side of it in our 2D views. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. And if you have any questions, you know, feel free to interrupt if something's not clear. But now I have to draw in my front reference plane, or my reference plane to control the height of my cube. So going back to here to create reference plane, from my front view, I want to draw in a reference plane like this. Okay. Now that I've done that, I want to create a dimension to control the height of this. And in this case, I don't have to do that equality dimension because I don't have something down here below. And this is the ground plane. So I don't want like a reference plane below the ground plane. I just want to start at the ground plane and go upward in height. So I'm going to name this one top. And then with that selected, you get this preview dimension here. And that's really cool because it lets you just click on it and create a dimension out of this. So you can see now I have a dimension that says 2'11". Okay. So if I click on this, this is now where I create my parameter to control the height like I did with the desk in the project. So to add a parameter to a dimension, you want to select the dimension and then come up here to where it says label and click this tiny little button where it says create parameter. Right, there's lots of tiny little hidden buttons everywhere in Revit. Just get used to it. It's this button, that's the one that you want. All right, now we have the option here to make a parameter. We get to name it something that we want. It's going to be a dimension parameter, which is what it says by default. And we can choose to make it either a type parameter or instance parameter. I'm not going to explain the difference between these right now because we are close on time, but in my intro to Revit Families video that I have posted that you'll watch this week, I go into great detail about the difference between these two boxes. So make sure that you watch that and understand the difference. One, you'll be quizzed on it. Two, it's very important. You really, really have to understand the difference between these. And it's like such a small little setting here in this window. And you're like, what's the difference? What's it matter? There's a big difference. So right now I'm just going to leave this as a type parameter. But in the video, you'll see what the difference is. So I'm going to call this one height. Okay? Click OK. So now it says height equals 2'11". So if I go back now to my family types window where I have all my parameters, you can see in the list I get under dimensions a control for height. And I can change that to be whatever I want. So maybe I want this to be 4 feet. Okay, click apply. It's going to move it up to 4 feet. If I want to set back to 2 feet, hit enter, click apply. It's going to move it back down to 2 feet. Okay, so there's my height. For the width and the depth, what I want to do is go here to create, annotate, aligned dimension, and then I want to go here to here for my depth, and then here to here for my width. So once I've created these, just click on the dimension. Again, new parameter. This one is going to be width. And this one is going to be depth. Okay. And again, I can go back here now. They appear under the list. If you want to, you can change the order of these. But you can go in and change the dimensions. So let's make these even. 3 foot by 3 foot. Okay. So now they're the same. Another element of this, which hopefully I'll be able to cover it more like next week during a live session, is this little formula section here. Now, formulas are a way for you to like link two parameters together using logic. So I don't know if any of you have like done any kind of coding or programming before or familiar with it, but it's basically the same idea. So we're just using logical expressions to make things happen. So for example, this will kind of hopefully illustrate the point I'm making. I could write a parameter or a formula here that says if depth equals 3 feet, make width 5 feet. If it doesn't equal 3 feet, make it 6 feet. So if depth, and this is case sensitive, and you have to spell it correctly for it to understand this. And there's a very specific like syntax you have to use for Revit to understand what you're saying. It's very similar to like an Excel or Google Sheets formula. If you've like made a spreadsheet, same exact thing. If you've like written a formula in there to do something, it's pretty much the exact same way you have to type it here. So if depth equals 3 feet, comma, the next thing I'm going to type is what I want width to equal. So I'll type 2 feet. Whoops. 2 feet, comma, and then the last comma is what's going to happen if it doesn't equal 2 feet. So otherwise, if it does not equal, if it doesn't equal 3 feet. So if it doesn't equal 3 feet, let's make it 5 feet. Whoops. And then I have to close this off with a parenthesis. So now this grays out because the formula is controlling it, and you can see because this is 3 feet, this is set to 2 feet. Okay. So now let's change this. So now I'm going to make depth 4 feet. So if I make it 4 feet, you should see that this will change now the width to 5 feet, right? So 4 feet. There we go. Changes it to 5 feet. So that's what you would use a formula for. That's a very basic example. And they can get very, very, very complicated. Like I'll have to show you some of the other models that I make. I write so many of these formulas and they just like get like to be a mile long and like so complex. But you can do really, really cool, powerful things with formulas. But that's the idea. So if you have a formula in here, it's going to take precedent over what's written in the value and you can't control it. But if you want to get rid of the formula, just highlight it, backspace, and then click apply. It's going to clear it out and then you get control over the width again. All right, so we have 8 minutes left. Very last thing to do is show you how to draw the actual cube and tie it to these so that we can change the dimensions of it. All right, so I'm going to go back to Create tab, click here on Extrusion, and I'm going to draw just a basic rectangle. Okay, and I'm not going to worry too much about the placement. There are a few different ways that you can do this. Actually, I'll just show you both. The first way to do this is to draw it directly on top of your reference planes like this. And it's just whatever you're comfortable with. So if you want to snap this to reference planes, you can. And once you do, you get these little lock icons that come up. So these lock icons are saying tie this to that reference plane. So basically, think of the pink line as your muscle and think of the reference plane as the bone. We're going to tie the muscle to the bone so that they move together. So we'll just go around and click on all of these and they're tied. The other way to do that would be to don't worry about where you draw this, just draw it and then use your align tool up here, align, and snap these together. So if I click on first what I want to align to, and then second, what I want to align, it's going to move it there, make them on top of each other, and then I get the little lock. I usually do it like that just out of habit, but if you're more comfortable doing it the other way, you can do it the other way. It doesn't matter. It does the same thing. So align and lock all of them. Very important. Okay. And now we click the green check and we say that we're done. But we're not done, right? Because we have to do the height too. So to do the height, we go to a front elevation, and you can see right now my cube, it's not locked to anything. So I could grab that little handle and I could drag it and do whatever with it because it's not tied to anything. So now what I can do is drag that over top of that plane, release, and then lock it. Or I could, again, do the align and lock thing, but I think you get it. So now that's locked to it. And if I go back to 3D view, let me turn off my, my preview there. Go back to my 3D view. There is my cube. And now if I change my dimensions, it should move however I want it to move. So 3 feet, right? Height, let's make that like 6 feet. Perfect. And then let's make our depth 3 feet. And that works too. So what I'm doing here is what's called flexing, okay? Flexing is where you draw your parameters, you build all of them, and then you test them to make sure that they do what you expect, right? So for example, really quickly before we end, if I were to go back in here and unlink this and just put it here, let's say I forgot to align and lock this to that reference plane, right? No more lock icon. I go back here and I go to control my width. And of course it works. Of course it likes to work when I'm trying to illustrate a point. Let's say you did that and it didn't work, right? You always have to test things. That's the point. Usually when I do that, you know, it doesn't work right. And you can see there, right? I just changed it, but now it's saying, it still says 1 foot here. So I broke the relationship. So if I do 3 foot, maybe it'll, yeah, there. So it's broken. So it's obviously not 3 feet, right? So that says 3 feet, but it's like 6 feet. So you always want to like check it to make sure that it's doing what you want it to do. And if it's not, you need to go in and fix it. So the term for that is flexing. I'll always ask you to go in and flex your model. Make sure you test every single one of these parameters you build so that it does what you're expecting it to do. Otherwise, you're going to run into problems and you're going to get into Revit and you're going to like change something and it's going to give you a little error in the bottom and you'll be like, what the heck? Why is it doing that? I don't understand. It's because you didn't test out your parameters and make sure that they work correctly. So always test as you go. Maybe make 1 or 2 of them, 2 parameters, test it, see that it works, and fix it if it doesn't. All right. We're 3 minutes from time. So I'm going to cut it there. Like I said, this whole video, I know I covered a lot of stuff. It's all going to be recorded. It's all going to be posted to Canvas under a lectures folder. So you'll see that go up probably tomorrow. I'll be able to upload it. And then if you need to go back and review anything, you can go back and watch this whole video. I'm going to do that for all the lectures so that nobody's like left behind or confused about anything. What else? I guess if there's just any questions, always feel free to email me or text me. So I put my phone number on the syllabus because I'm fine with you texting me. If you have a question, just text me. Be respectful of the hour that you text me. You know, I don't really like getting a text at midnight, but if it's an emergency, you know, I'm willing to help you out, whatever the time, honestly. Just want to make sure that you have the help that you need. I don't want to be that professor who assumes you know something and then like asks you to do some crazy ridiculous thing, and you're like, I have no idea what's going on, you know. So I'm always willing to help out if you're willing to ask for help, because my goal is to make sure that you are prepared for success, right? I mean, that should be a given since you're in college, but believe me, I've been to 2 different universities. I've had so many different professors. Sometimes you just get those people who don't seem to really care, and they do the bare minimum, and you are left to be the one to figure everything out on your own, and that's just the worst, and it's super frustrating. So I don't want that for you guys, but make sure that you ask for help if you need it, and I'll give it to you. Very willing to do one-on-one sessions. Just contact me. We can get together and we can screen share and we can look at what's going on. And it doesn't even have to be related to this class. If it's like something for studio or some other class, you can ask me and I'll help you. Like, I used to teach the methods and materials class. It's different now, but just for example, like if there's something related to construction that you have a question about, like, you know, you can ask me if I'm helping you with this and you're just like, hey, I have a question about this other class. Doesn't matter. Like, I'll help you with anything you're dealing with in the ID program to the best of my ability. So I just want to make sure that is clear. And I don't think there's anything else I can think of at the moment. So like I said, we're going to plan on once a week. It's going to be the first day out of whatever days we settle on. I'm going to send out like a little poll, and I'm just going to ask for you to like put down a time slot that works for you. If there's like any major conflicts and this is the only time that will work for everybody, we might just have to stick with it. I don't know, but hopefully not. And again, these sessions are optional, so you don't feel like you have to come to them if you can't. But you know, try to if you can. Obviously, I don't want to just be doing a session for one person if I can avoid it. I'd like to be at least a few people. I will be recording these, like I said, so if you miss it, you can always go back and watch it after the fact, not live. But it's also just a time for you to ask questions while I'm here available with you for like a solid chunk of 2 hours. So that's it on time. I'm going to send out that poll. I'm going to upload this video tomorrow, and make sure that you start looking at the content in the folder and just get through the week 1 stuff. So it's just a few lectures, and you can actually start working on the first lab assignment. I have all the videos for those. You could get that done this week if you want to. At least the first part of it. Next week there's going to be a little bit more to it, but make sure you're watching the videos. Make sure you are caught up on everything that you need to do. Anything that's in the folder now is what you need to focus on. Make sure it's done by midnight Sunday. That's when I always want things done, by midnight on Sundays. Other than that, I think we are good. If anybody has questions about anything, you can ask me now. You can stick around after the fact. I'll maybe hang around for a few minutes, and you can ask questions. Also, if you have any friends in the other sections who need extra help, they are more than welcome to attend this section as well. So if they have a question and you think it'd be beneficial for them to maybe tune in, you can just send them the meeting link, and I'm fine with them, tuning in on this meeting as well. So just want to put that out there. But otherwise, have a good night. I'm excited for the semester, and I hope that we'll have a good time, and it'll be a good class. So hang out for a few minutes, and you guys can take off. Yep. You too. Thanks.